everyone, and welcome to the MoeGamer podcast. Sorry, it's been quite a while, but both Chris and I have been any combination of busy and ill and exhausted and all that sort of thing. So 2020's got off to a great start for both of us, but we're here now. So I'm Pete Davison from MoeGamer.net, and I'm joined by Chris Kasky of MrGilderPixels.com. So, how are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing all right. Ready to talk about the video games.
Yeah, good stuff. So, as usual, we're going to follow our standard three-part format today. We're going to kick off with some news, and because it's been quite a while since we met, there's some news we're going to be talking about is probably a little bit older now, but it's stuff that we wanted to mention anyway, and stuff that's still relevant to us.
And it's still relevant. It hasn't happened yet. So,
yeah,
as far as
exactly.
I'm concerned, it's still new.
Exactly.
If the thing we're talking about isn't exist to buy yet, then it's still worth talking about as news.
No, the news is only the stuff that happened today. You know that. But yeah, whatever. Yeah. And then after that, our second segment will be what we've been playing lately. So, with it being quite a while, hopefully we've both got quite a few things to talk about there. I know I've got a fair few. So, and then our third segment today is our topic-based discussion as usual, and today we're going to be talking about beat-em-ups as a specific genre or genres, depending on how our discussion goes. So yeah, that's the plan for today. So, news. Starting from when I remember to start taking notes on news stories. The first one I've got here is that Little Town Hero, which is Game Freak's RPG on Switch, which is based around the idea of sort of fighting things using ideas and concepts and that sort of thing. That is getting a physical release in spring of 2020, courtesy of NISA America. So that's cool, because up until this point, it's been out for a little while now. I think it came out before Christmas, and it was digital only to begin with. But yeah, it's good to see that that this is getting a packaged release. It may well be one of those ones that NISA do where it's they just do like a single run of them, and then that's it. So stuff like Lapis Labyrinth and stuff like that had a similar situation. So those people who really want a boxed package copy can have a nice one that's got an art book and soundtrack and little bits and pieces and other goodies in there without having to pay too much over the odds for it. So all we know on that is that it's coming in spring 2020. But yeah, it looks like a nice addition, so I will probably grab that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Number of reasons, right? Like, first of all, Game Freak's non-Pokemon stuff is always really fascinating.
Yeah,
you know, we had a similar discussion a couple episodes back when I was talking about how much I was enjoying Giga Wrecker. They have a culture internally where they do a lot of like internal game jams and stuff, and then like change things into like projects if they've got a really good idea. So they're really a creative batch, and this is going back years before Pokemon even existed. Like, one of my favorite games ever on the original 8-bit Nintendo's Mendel Palace, and that was them. And really, just I've never played a game like Mendel Palace.
Yeah.
Since then, not even in like the indie sphere has anyone ever tried to like replicate it in like a tribute kind of way. Like, it's such a wholly unique game. So they do a lot of interesting work. Also, Toby Fox did the soundtrack for Little Town Hero.
Yes, that's right.
And so he's great.
Yes, yeah. Little Town Hero is one of those games that seem to sort of divide opinion quite a bit. I saw a lot of sort of reviews kind of crapping on it a bit, but then also some people I follow on Twitter whose opinions I generally trust and align with, they had a great time with it. So I'm expecting to enjoy that myself as well.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Little Town Hero is like the RPG like moniker is very loose, right? It's not really an RPG in the traditional sense. It's more of like it's got like sim elements in a way, like, as is my understanding. Like, this isn't a specific like adventure RPG like we know of. Like, you're not forming a party, you're not really developing a character in the same way. It's got like a heavy social element to it, wherein you're exploring the town and talking to people to get the ideas that end up becoming part of what you can execute in battle. But it's not like there's no random encounters. The game is just a series of protracted boss battles. You always know what the boss is going to be, when the boss is going to strike, and the idea is like the prep work for the boss fight. It's not really like an RPG in like the traditional adventure sense. So I think a lot of people probably dove into it, once again, not willing to appreciate it on its own merits, right? Like this isn't an RPG that we're looking for. This is something totally different that we don't know how to dissect and understand mechanics. Like, all our typical complaints.
Yeah. So, looking forward to giving that a try. And like I say, it'll be really nice to have a boxed copy of that as well. All right, continuing on, the next story we've got is... this is a really interesting and odd story to me. This is... Taito has announced a game called Touhou Spell Bubble, which is Taito making a fan game of a series of Japanese doujin games, which is this is just blowing my mind in a weird sort of way. It's they're basically making a new puzzle bubble style puzzler, so shooting coloured balloons up the screen in matching colours and that sort of thing, with Touhou characters, and it looks adorable. And so there's. I've watched some gameplay footage, and it's one of those games that kind of looks absolutely baffling when you watch gameplay of it with no context. But I imagine it's one of those things that you can sort of get into the groove of once you've got an idea of the basic mechanics.
Sure.
But yeah, it's sort of a really nice looking, colourful game with little chibi Touhou sprites. And it's got arrangements of famous Touhou tracks from a lot of artists who are known for doing arrangements of the music from the games, and Zuntata are contributing to the music as well. So all round, this is going to be a really cool kind of Touhou spin-off from the sound of things.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and just the opportunity to buy Puzzle Bobble on modern consoles, essentially, is why I'm really excited. Like, I'm not really in the Touhou fan sphere, but I love, as we've talked about in our Puzzler episodes in the past, there's certain franchises where I expect there to be an entry for every console.
Yeah.
So I can so I can always stay on top. I always want to have a modern Puzzle Bobble to break out on whatever current console is existent. Yeah. I always want to have a Tetris. I always want to have a Puyo. So this is the new Puzzle Bobble, so I need to have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there hasn't been a Neo Geo release of Puzzle Bobble yet, has there, on the Arcade Archives or anything like that?
Oh, maybe. I don't really pay attention to those.
I don't remember seeing one, because I feel like it's one of those things that I would have probably picked up if I could see it. Okay, next story we've got is that Aksys has confirmed a bunch of Otome games are coming to Nintendo Switch in 2020. These appear to be Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth, Code Realize Future Blessings, Color Cross Malice Unlimited, Cafe Enchant, and Pio Fiore no Bancho. I don't know any of these. I'm vaguely familiar with Code Realize and Color Cross Malice, but I haven't played them. But I know most of those are pretty well regarded. So, and also people are always happy to see new Otome games getting released, and Aksys are the specialists in those at the moment. So, good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So no exact launch windows for those yet, but they're on the way this year.
Yes. Yeah.
As are a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right. Moving on. Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme versus Maxiboost ON, whatever it is releasing for PlayStation 4 worldwide in 2020. Now, this is cool because I know there's been a lot of Gundam games that have remained confined to Japan over the last few years, and sort of people have imported Japanese or Asian versions of those. But yeah, it looks like this one is coming out globally, which is cool. Yeah, so it's on the way in 2020. So what is this? What is this? I don't know this game at all.
So the difference between like Maxiboost and like other Gundam games is like Maxiboost is an arcade game. It's essentially just Virtual On Gundam Edition.
Oh, nice.
So like super fast paced, like multiplayer combat, like boosting around, like distance game, like keep away, like really just fun multiplayer. 183 different playable mobile suits from across 36 different iterations of Gundam are playable. Nice. Are playable in this. It's 2-on-2 battles, online and offline multiplayer. It's just really popular in Japanese arcades, and for those of us who really love Virtual On and have trouble grasping with the fact that the series is dead, this is pretty much it. Like, this is the closest we're ever going to get to a new Virtual On. So if you're a Gundam fan and you love Virtual On, that's a Venn diagram that's basically a circle anyway. So this is really cool news, and this is really going to be worth getting. I mean, just for the range of playable characters alone, if you're a Gundam history fan.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, it's nice to see stuff that's previously remained confined to Japan or Asia actually getting an official Western release as well. Because I know that sort of stuff like Gundam and Super Robot Wars and all that sort of thing. There's people who are hungry for them over here, and they just don't make it over for whatever reason, whether it's licensing or worries that they won't sell enough copies or whatever. But yeah, so this is cool.
I mean, I've been a Gundam fan for most of my life, and I'll be the first to admit that, like, Gundam games are usually shit. Like, I could count on... I wouldn't need a whole hand to count the amount of, like, genuinely good Gundam games I've played. There's, like, one that's, like, a simulator, like a piloting sim that was on the Dreamcast that was really incredible. And, but, like, the ones that are good are usually these. The ones that are arcade ports. Like, all my best memories of Gundam games from, like, the PS2 era are all from the ones that were, like, arcade ports and, like, versus fighters and, like, stuff like that. Like, the ones that try to be, like, contained single-player experiences tend to not be great. So this is a very exciting time. And really just a cool celebration of the history of the franchise because of all the different playable suits. And hopefully they'll all have some, like, you know, handling differences and move differences, and it'll really matter who you play as. It's just going to be a really good time. And this is something that I'll be able to have even friends who aren't anime fans enjoy playing, like, local multiplayer, just because it's such a bombastic, fun, arcadey experience.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. All right, continue on. Sega is up to something with Sonic in 2020. So they've launched a new website called Sonic 2020, where throughout the year, on the 20th of each month, they're going to release information on various projects. And this is all a lead up to next year, which is the 30th anniversary of Sonic, for those of you who weren't quite feeling old enough yet. But yeah, so... at the moment there's not sort of a ton of information on here as yet. They've given away, like, some wallpapers and some... That's about it, really. Some smartphone wallpapers, desktop wallpapers. It's like a Twitter header and some icons you can use on social media at the minute. But then from, like, the 20th of this month onwards, 20th of February onwards, we should start getting some more information on some new Sonic stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
Because it's actually been quite a while since we've had a new Sonic game, isn't it? The last one was, what, Forces?
Yeah, Forces. That was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I'm ready. I'm just hoping this means a new Sonic game, and it surely does. It surely does. Yeah. Because we unapologetically love Sonic here at the MoeGamer podcast.
Yes, we certainly do. We certainly do. Like, even the ones that people don't like.
Sometimes especially the ones that people don't.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Modern Sonic is fun, and I won't.
Definitely.
And we broker no argument.
All right, continuing on. This is definitely old news at this point, but Super Smash Bros. Had its first Fighters Pass completed with Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses, which made everyone upset because Fire Emblem, Sword Boy, whatever. Apparently they're quite fun to play as, though. Apparently they handle quite differently from the other Fire Emblem folks, so, well, whatever. But sort of another interesting development there is that they're doing a second pack of fighters, which is now available for pre-purchase, which is another 6 fighters, and then presumably that will come with new stages and music and other bits and bobs as well, just like the first Fighters Path has. They haven't announced what these fighters are going to be yet, but they have said that they've already decided what they are. So basically, don't at Sakurai on Twitter. Because he's already made his mind up.
Well, he also had a thing a couple days ago where it was like, leave me alone, I don't get to choose who the new people are. Like, he's like, it's not my choice, I'm told, and then I like make it happen. He's like, just in general, leave me alone.
Oh god, yeah. I don't envy him at all. Like him and what's his name, Masuda from Pokemon. I really don't envy them at the minute, because like they are having to deal with some of the worst people on the entire internet, and it's unfortunate, but well, there we go. Yeah. So 6 new Smash characters are on the way.
Can't wait.
Yeah. I should really get a feel for the existing ones, because I've played a little of most of them at this point, but I haven't played a lot of them yet. Like I really enjoyed Banjo and Kazooie for one. They're a lot of fun, but I haven't spent a lot of time with them. I should really pick up Smash again and do some more with that.
I bought the Fighters Pass, but I haven't played it since I haven't played Smash since Joker. Yeah. So I've really got to dive back, because I'm totally like, I'm gonna buy this new Fighters Pass, obviously, but like I didn't even play like 3/4 of the characters from the last one. Like I really got to give Terry a try and play on that King of Fighters stage. I just never got around to it.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So apparently the Skies of Arcadia developer really wants to develop a sequel. So, I mean, this isn't necessarily news as such, because it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
No, but it made my heart smile.
Yeah, exactly. So basically this all stems from a Twitter interaction where Kenji Hiruta was sharing some artwork relating to Skies of Arcadia, and sort of how happy he was that people were still excited about the series and so on. And he said outright that he really wants to make a sequel to it. Nothing to report on that other than that, but he is interested. So if the opportunity does arise, then hopefully he gets the chance to do that.
It would be so good.
Yeah.
It would be so good. I don't know. So for those of you who don't put 2 and 2 together, Mr. Gilder, like Gilder from Skies of Arcadia, is my favorite RPG character of all time. Like, that's why I go by Mr. Gilder everywhere. It's like, I love Skies. Like, so anytime anything remotely related to Skies is mentioned, I'm like, my heart can't take it.
Nice. All right, continuing on, we've got some news that MiHoYo have announced that their action-adventure game, Henshin Impact, which is, I don't know if it's a sequel or just a spiritual successor to Honkai Impact, which has been available on mobile and possibly PC for a while. This is coming to Switch.
This is that game that everyone was like, it's a Chinese ripoff of Breath of the Wild.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I'd forgotten the name of that. I remembered, I remember discussion about that, but I couldn't remember what it was called. Yes, I remember now. But yeah, this is looking really nice, and I don't know if it's sort of deliberate in this trailer, but it's certainly starting to look a bit more distinct now as well. It's looking a bit more explicitly anime than Breath of the Wild. It's not got that same sort of washed out color palette that Breath of the Wild's got. It's a lot more sort of vibrant. Yeah, so the new trailer doesn't really feature very much in the way of information or gameplay or anything like that, but it certainly looks nice. So
yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I love kind of brightly colored open world games, and I love I have a specific love for exploring like games from other regions. So like this recent influx of like Chinese developed stuff on like modern console has been really interesting to explore and learn more about. So it's really surprising to like see how like different national identities and like ways of thinking really influence game design.
Yeah,
there's a tremendous pull in the hardcore community to examine the history of Korean games specifically and how they are both similar from and different from Japanese games. So now that the China market's really starting to make a name for itself, this is just a new opportunity to explore different national sensibilities in game design. So really excited to see how this translates to this kind of open world experience.
Yeah, cool. All right, continuing on. Konami has announced a new game. I was just thinking the other day, I've not really heard much from Konami recently, in general. But yeah, they've announced a new game via Koro magazine in Japan. It's called Solomon Program, or it may be called Solomon Program. That's the title it's going under at the minute, anyway. And this looks like it's going to be a sort of monster collecting game with strategy RPG battles. Not a ton of information aside from some concept art and the news that there's going to be a manga and a code for a downloadable demo in the next issue of Koro's sister magazine, Mira Koro Comic, which is probably out at the time that you hear this. So if you have access to sort of Japanese publications and so on, you can probably get your hands on a demo at this point. Aside from that, not a lot of information about this, but it does have some cool character designs from what I can see.
Yeah, I thought it was news because it's a new Konami franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and it's, per our previous episode, I really like monster collecting and training games. I also really love strategy RPGs. I really like when the two of them get together. So this is hopefully a great opportunity. Interesting. New IPs are worth celebrating these days.
Yes, definitely. Especially when they're from like a company who is sort of not been especially well regarded for doing good things with their previous ones in the past, or one that seems to have been quiet for a while. Like I say, I was thinking about Konami the other day. I can't remember sort of the exact context, but aside from those Contra and Castlevania collections that they did a while back, I'd not really heard much from them at all. For a little while. But yeah, so this is cool. Be interested to see where this goes and if it sort of makes it over here or anything. But yeah, check out the news stories on that, because the art style is very nice, certainly. Okay, next piece of news is actually relevant to what we're talking about today, which is news from Arc System Works. They are bringing the Double Dragon and Kunio-Kun Retro Brawler bundle to PlayStation 4 and Switch on February the 20th, 2020. Which is very exciting for several reasons. Firstly, this is a collection of great games. Secondly, a lot of these games haven't come out here before. So a lot of the Kunio-Kun ones specifically have remained confined to Japan previously. Probably the most interesting thing about this is that the ones that haven't come over here before is they've actually bothered to localize them. So for the first time, you'll be able to play a bunch of these games in English. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 11 games that are being localized for the first time.
It's awesome.
Which is awesome. I'm so excited about this. Because these are really great games from what I understand. I'm not sure it's all of them, because I think it's just the NES era, isn't it? I'm not sure if I don't know. I haven't really looked into these games specifically, but
this is a very gray area in my expertise. Technos games in general are not something I know a heck of a lot about.
Yeah, because I know that the Kunio-Kun series definitely continued up into the Super NES era.
Oh yeah,
because I know that the characters from River City Girls, they previously appeared in one of the Super NES games that we didn't have over here previously. But yeah, other than that, I don't know a ton about the series. So this will be an ideal opportunity to explore it and get a feel for it. But it is also including the English versions as well. So you're getting both Renegade and Neketsu Renegade Kunio-Kun, because this was the era where games got quite heavily localized when they came west, like complete changing character design and setting in some cases.
Yeah.
And yeah, these series were quite a significant example of that going on. So this collection will contain both the Western and localized Japanese versions as well.
Interesting. I mean, something that's relevant to our later discussion, but like Renegade is often considered the first beat 'em up.
Yes.
Yes. So this is a pretty important game historically to be able to get your hands on. So this is really exciting for a lot of reasons. Also because a lot of the games on this collection were for the Famicom Disk System.
Yes.
So even if we wanted to have them over here in the West, like it would have been a challenge to do so. They would have had to have been modified or downgraded to be cartridge compatible and then changed considerably. So this is a really neat piece of history.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I read somewhere as well that they're taking quite an interesting approach with this, which is rather than, in the cases where there are arcade versions of them, like Double Dragon, they're specifically doing the console versions.
Yeah, this is just the console stuff.
Yeah, and that's noteworthy in the case of Double Dragon in particular, because the NES versions of those games are quite different from the arcade versions.
Yeah.
They're not straight ports. They in some cases they play very, very differently. I mean, I can't remember if it's Double Dragon 1 or Double Dragon 2 that's on the Nintendo Switch Online app at the minute, the NES app. But yeah, I fired that up for the first time. I hadn't played the NES version before, and I was like, whoa, this is completely different. And I was very surprised, but it's a really good game in its own right as well. So it's good to see these versions getting some acknowledgement as well. Cool. Right, continuing on, at the time of recording, I think Phantasy Star Online 2's beta has just kicked off on Xbox, and some news relating to that is that the manual for the online beta test at the minute has confirmed that it's going to be coming to Steam as well. So the PC version of this will be available via Steam as well as via Xbox.com or Xbox Game Pass or Microsoft Store or wherever it's going to be. So yeah, those who prefer to keep everything in one place on Steam, you'll be able to get Phantasy Star Online 2 via Steam, which is cool. Don't think there's any news about whether it's coming to other platforms yet. The story I'm looking at on Silicon Era at the moment says it will supposedly end up on all platforms outside of Japan, but I don't think there's been any confirmation of that as yet. So at the moment, the only platforms that have been specifically announced are Xbox One and PC. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that, I guess. But the beta test is currently ongoing, and people are enjoying themselves. So yeah, so I know you're quite a fan of Phantasy Star, particularly sort of first one and fourth one. And did you play Phantasy Star Online, the original one?
Oh, religiously.
Yeah.
Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 on the GameCube is like one of my top 5 games of all time.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to Phantasy Star Online 2 more than you could possibly imagine.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was going to ask because I know you sort of have mixed feelings about sort of online-centric games and MMOs and that sort of thing.
But Phantasy Star Online isn't really an MMO. It's more just like third-person Diablo.
Yes.
Which is amazing. It's like, what if Diablo played like Devil May Cry? Oh, okay. Like, it's the shit.
Yeah. Did you ever have a chance to play that Southeast Asian version that was temporarily open to the world for those 2 blissful days, like a couple of years back?
Yes, for those 2 blissful days.
Yeah, so you've actually had a go at it, and
I've played it in Japanese too.
Fair enough. Yeah,
like just muddled through it, like as much as I could using like proxies and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's good. It's good. I'm definitely going to give it a go when it launches properly. Just because it's a beautiful looking game. You can make wonderful characters with it, including cute android girls with lightsabers. Which as I recall, you had a little song about a few episodes back, but
yeah, I tend to sing about cute robot girls. But so it's still quite unclear whether or not we're going to be getting the PS4 version ever.
Yeah, no, this is what I was saying a minute ago. At the moment, the only confirmed versions we got for the West are Xbox One and PC, which I think is something to do with like some sort of exclusivity they presumably negotiated with Microsoft at some point.
Sure.
But the Silicon Era story says that it's supposedly going to end up on all platforms, and apparently this comes straight from the mouth of Phil Spencer. So supposedly it will end up on everything.
Because I'll play it on Steam, but I want this on PS4. I want this on my TV, on my couch. Like, I want it on PS4.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question is, will characters be cross-platform? Like, if I started on Steam because I can't wait, will I be able to log in on the PS4, like Final Fantasy 14 style?
Yeah. They would be foolish not to do that, I think. And I think there's a good chance that they will do that, because sort of cross-play and stuff has become a much bigger deal for Microsoft in particular over the last year or two, probably. Microsoft have really sort of kind of led the way in that regard, and it's sort of filtering over to other platforms as well. So hopefully, you'll be able to pick up and play or whatever. All right, moving on. So, Netflix has confirmed that there's a third season of Castlevania, and it is coming on March the 5th of 2020. It's going to be made up of 10 episodes. So Season 2 had 8, Season 1 had 4. So, they're gradually expanding this as it goes on. So, that's cool.
I can't believe how soon it is.
Uh-huh.
I can't believe how soon it is. It's unbelievable. It's so good. Castlevania's so good.
I still haven't watched it, I must confess. I still haven't watched it.
What are you doing with your life? You need to watch it. It's so good.
I'm playing video games is what I'm doing with my life.
This is also video game related.
Yes, I know. I don't.
And especially thanks to the Castlevania collections and your recently found love of Castlevania 3.
Yes, I know. I don't have a good excuse really. I don't have a good excuse really.
Watch some anime every now and then.
Yes. All right. I'll do that at some point. Anyway, continuing on. The Wonderful 101 is back, and this is part of a broader project that Platinum teased recently, and then subsequently partially revealed. So Platinum Games launched a site with the teaser with like a number 4 on it. And so there was all sorts of speculation on what this might be. Is it going to be 4 new games? Is it going to be Drakengard 4? Probably not. It'll be nice, but probably not.
There's still hope. There's still hope.
There is still hope, but you know. It was subsequently revealed that this is 4 things that Platinum Games are working on. And the first of which is they want to remaster The Wonderful 101, which, for the unfamiliar, was a really interesting and strange game for Wii U originally, where you control basically like a big band of heroes. And it's a ridiculous over-the-top action game in pure Platinum style, but you're controlling like these different types of heroes, and they have different colours and different special abilities and stuff. And the original one used sort of gestural controls on the touchscreen of the gamepad, so it'll be interesting to see how that's going to port to other platforms, but presumably button combinations. But yeah, this was a really cool game that I haven't played nearly enough of on the Wii U.
I bounced off it hard because I hate the touchscreen controls.
Yeah, fair enough.
I can't wait to have this on the PS4, like reimagined and attractive, and I just can't. Have you looked at like where the Kickstarter's at?
Yeah. I was just going to say. So the interesting thing about this project is that they are crowdfunding it, which surprised a few people, because Platinum Games just had a quite a significant investment from Tencent from China, and so people are going, well, why do you need to do crowdfunding for that? And I've seen some people get quite angry about this, but from what I understand, the reasoning behind it is that the Tencent investment was on the condition that they were sort of developing new IPs and new things, whereas this is something that people have wanted for a while, and I think Platinum have wanted to do this for a while as well, but for various circumstances and various reasons, they haven't been able to do that. So much like when crowdfunding first started and Kickstarter first got off the ground, and its big success stories were game developers being able to do things that they were not able to do within the standard confines of the publisher structure. This is exactly the same thing. This is Platinum wanting to take one of their past games, self-publish it, and bring it to a wider audience, which is super cool. So at the time of recording, the original Kickstarter goal was 5,425,000 yen, which is about £38,356. Currently, and as I'm looking at it, it just went up a bit.
I just saw it too.
Currently, it is at 162,088,242 yen, which is equivalent to £1,146,028. Perhaps you can provide us with what that is in dollars at the moment.
Yeah, so the US dollars, it would have been about $50,000 goal, and it's now at 1.5 million.
Yeah, it's insane. And so much of this was sort of within like the first hour of this Kickstarter being up. People were like, holy shit, Wonderful 101. Yes, I want this. And like they smashed through enough of their stretch goals to get things like the Switch version, the Steam version, the PS4 version, the new time attack mode. So they've still got some stretch goals left to go. They need to get to 1.5 million to add a 2D side-scrolling adventure with a young version of a hero from the game. And they need to get to $1.75 million for a remix soundtrack featuring a secret special guest. And the stretch goals are sort of faded off at the moment, suggesting that there might be some more at some point as well. But,
I mean, we're at 1.4 mil USD right now.
Yeah.
It's gonna clear 1.5 by the end of the weekend.
Yeah.
With 27 days to go. What must it be like to work at Platinum? Like, to just know how loved you are.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I imagine many development houses feel a constant state of worry, whether or not their games are wanted, whether or not they're loved. But if you work at Platinum, it's just like, this must feel amazing.
Yeah.
To see, like, I can't imagine. It just ticked up again. It's so good. It's this outpouring of support and love for Platinum's games and their design philosophy. I mean, just treat this Kickstarter like a pre-order program.
Yeah.
I'm in for the $60 game with soundtrack physical copy. Like, the end. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. So, this is cool, and I love the rewards on this as well. It's like
they're great. They're great.
It's like, besides the usual stuff that you might expect, like physical rewards and soundtrack CDs and sort of extra little bits and pieces and so on. If you pledge more than 11,000 yen, which is about £78, you get blocked on Twitter by Hideki Kamiya, having been shouted at by him. He will shout at you publicly and then block you. And they take great pains to point out on the Kickstarter page that this is completely optional and you don't have to have this if you don't want it. But realistically, people are going to want that attention. And I think I read somewhere that one of the stretch goal. Oh no, it's the social media goal. If the social media goal gets to the highest level, Kamiya will unblock everyone. Delightful. Yeah, so interested to try this. Like I say, I don't have a ton of experience of the Wii U version. I didn't bounce off it because I didn't like the touchscreen controls or anything. I just haven't really got around to playing it. But I do own a copy. But I might pick up one of these remastered ones for sure, just to sort of show Platinum a bit of love.
Mm-hmm. Also, while we're on the topic of Kickstarter, can I just plug Battle Axe?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there is currently a Kickstarter running for a game called Battle Axe, which is like almost like a gauntlet-style overhead beat-em-up.
Yeah.
But it is by, I'm going to butcher this name, but Henk Nieborg, who is an artist who has worked previously with WayForward on the Shantae series.
Yes.
And this game is drop-dead gorgeous. It is described as a sumptuous pixel art arcade adventure. Like, it is really cool, and I highly recommend people check it out. It's got 19 days to go. It's now about $13,000 short of its goal. There is goals for physical copies. Like, this really needs to exist. It is so cool.
Yeah.
Manami Matsume is working on the soundtrack, who did, like, Capcom in its heyday, right?
Yes.
Like, a lot of Mega Man titles, Final Fight, Magic Sword. Also helped on Shovel Knight and what was that other game that was by the Mega Man guy? Oh, Mighty Number 9. Like, she's great. Like, this really needs to happen. Hank Nieborg's work is absolutely, like, iconic in the modern pixel art sphere. So let's make his baby happen.
Yeah, definitely. All right, continuing on, a game called Below is coming to PlayStation 4. Just looking up on this, because this is one of those games that I've heard the name of, but I haven't really looked into it before. This is like a procedurally generated kind of survival hack and slash type game from the look of things.
Yeah.
And so the PS4 version is going to be adding a mode called Explore Mode as well. Which is basically a slightly easier mode, but rather than just being like your standard easy mode that makes sort of enemies a bit weaker or whatever, it's actually got some slight changes to the core rules of the game. So in the standard mode of the game, you have to manage hunger and thirst as part of the survival mechanics. There's traps that will instantly kill you, and there's sort of checkpoints aren't permanent in that mode. And what the Explore mode provides is that it takes out the hunger and thirst mechanics. It takes out the instant kills from traps and damage, and means that damage is over time rather than immediate. So it's supposed to sort of simulate bleeding or something like that and give you the opportunity to recover. And like I say, these checkpoints are permanent. So even after you die, you can continue from the same checkpoints that you've had previously. So the original survival mode will be there, and they call it its pure untouched form, which is cool. But for those who want a slightly more friendly experience, you've got that there as well. So
I posted this as a point of interest for a couple reasons. First and foremost, because this is by Capybara, which is a developer I have a ton of respect for. They did that amazing Might and Magic puzzle game.
Yes, I was going to say that. Might and Magic Clash of Heroes. That's such a great game. Such a great game that no one ever talks about. And thinking about it now, I've never written about it. I should probably correct that at some point.
It's an incredible game. They did that. They did Critter Crunch, which was another great puzzler. I believe they also did Super Time Force. I think that was them. Which is a really great side-scroller with a really cool time reversal mechanic. They make really neat games. And when the original... Wait, if we can dial things back a couple years to the announcement of the Xbox One... During their sizzle reel, this was one of their, like, big things.
Right.
Like, on the Xbox One, it was like, look, we got this exclusive game from Capybara. Like, this is the proof that we're supporting artistic, independent development. Like, we've got this exclusive game from Capybara on our system. And so for years, I've wanted to play this because it was Xbox One exclusive. And now it is not. Cool. So I'm very excited. It has a very unique artistic presentation to it. Really gorgeous play with like light and shadow. I can't wait. Yeah, it looks cool. Sounds cool.
Like I say, I've not come across this before, but yeah, Capybara, the stuff that I have played of their stuff previously has been excellent. So, and yeah, Might and Magic Clash of Heroes is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So yes, I'm going to have to dig that out and write about it this week now I've mentioned it. Right. Moving on. Atlus has put out a survey gauging interest in Switch ports of their past games, including Persona and... have they actually mentioned any other Mega 10 stuff as well? Oh, yes, they have. Yes, they have. So it's not just Persona games. So like most of the news stories reporting on this have focused on Persona, but... yeah, they did also mention Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, Shin Megami Tensei 4, and Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, Devil Summoner, Soul Hackers, and the Raido Kusanara games. And then, as well as that, they also mentioned Etrian Odyssey, Vanillaware titles, including 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, Dragon's Crown Pro, and Odin Sphere Lift here. And some miscellaneous games like Digital Devil Saga, Avatar Tuner, and Catherine Full Body as well. So I should emphasize at this point that a survey does not mean they're going to make these games. It does not mean they are necessarily going to port these games, but they are investigating whether or not people are interested in them, which is a significant start. So
all I have wanted for so many years was to have Persona 3 portable on a form that I can play on my television conveniently. Because I hate the original Persona 3 because you can't control your party.
Mm-hmm.
But like from a perspective of characters and setting, Persona 3 is my favorite Persona.
Yeah.
So like I want to replay it so bad, but not on my PlayStation Portable.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like what it would do to have 4 golden and 3 portable on the Switch.
Yeah.
Like unbelievable. And
Mm-hmm.
so everybody get up in this survey.
Yeah.
Except for it's in Japanese, right? So I guess not, but
where there's a will, there's a way.
I
yes.
want these games. The Raida Kuzunoa series, my god.
Yeah, it'd be great to see some of these remastered. And again, these are games that I don't necessarily need them to do anything fancy with. If they just port them and just make them run in HD, maybe at a better frame rate, but they don't need to upgrade the graphics or anything. Just put them on the eShop for like $15 or something like that. I'll be happy with that. I mean, I'd be happier if they did a physical release of them, obviously. But
no, let's not mince words. I won't be happy unless there's a physical release. I definitely need to buy Persona 3 for a 4th time. I definitely.
Oh God, yeah. Right. Last thing we got for today then. Onechanbara Origin is getting an Asian release, and this has it has English language options. So those who are wanting to play this and can't wait, basically, you can get the Asia English version. So this is a remake of the first 2 games that were originally on PS2, which were called something different over here. They just had really generic titles, like I think it was like Zombie Zone or something like that.
Oh really? See, I don't know what one we got in over here. We got one on the Wii and the 360 in the States, and they called it Bikini Samurai Squad in the States. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there's loads of them. There are loads of these games. So like the original one came out on PS2 as part of the Simple series, and that was just called the Onechanbara. Then there was the Onichan Puru, the Onichan Special Chapter, the Onechanbara 2, Onichan 2 Special Chapter. The one on Xbox looks like it was the 5th game.
Yeah, okay.
The one on the Wii was the 6th game. Then there was one on PS4 a couple of years back that we did get over here.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, this is a confusing series. So yeah, the one we got in English wasn't even like remotely related to the earlier ones. Or did you get one?
Of course, I was going to say, the Simple series you didn't get those in the States, did you?
That's correct. So Bikini Samurai Squad and the 360 and the Wii were the first ones to come stateside.
Yes. No, I'd completely forgotten about that fact. But we got a bunch of the Simple series games in Europe, which did not come out in the States. So I'm just looking up which one it is. But yeah, we definitely got at least one of the Onechanbara games. So we got the Onechanplu, the Neichan Toketsuban, which I think is the second one. Yes. So we got the second game and the third game, which was so the second game is called Zombie Hunters over here, and the third game is called the Sister Sword Fighter. Oh no, that didn't come out in Europe. There's another one somewhere. Where is it? Oh, it was just Zombie Hunters 2 over here. But that one is actually the fourth one. So we got the second one and the fourth one over here in Europe.
Okay.
But they were just called Zombie Hunters and Zombie Hunters 2. Just to confuse matters.
Right.
Oh, God. Yeah, so basically, Onechanbara Origin is a remake of the first two, from the look of things. And this is also the first time there's been a Chinese localization. Probably not relevant to a lot of people listening to that, but whatever. But there is an English localization in this version, and that's coming in summer of this year.
From what I understand, it's even going to have English voiceovers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I read that in a different article. But so yeah, this is a fun series. So it's just cool that we're going to be able to get it in English.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure we're not going to get it. Like, I'm sure there's not going to be an actual Western release of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless someone has mentioned it and I just didn't notice it in any of the news outlets anywhere. But I don't think the last one did particularly well. And given the current environment, I highly doubt.
Yeah. No, I've not seen anything about it. If it comes from anywhere, it will be Nice America, I think, but they've not said anything about it. So
or Xseed, right? Xseed did the last one.
Did they?
Yeah.
Did Nisa just distribute it? Because I definitely got a copy via Nisa Europe, but maybe they distribute it. Yeah.
But in the States, it was Xseed.
Ah, fair enough. Okie doke. Right, I think that's all the stories we had noted. Was there anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
No, that's good. That's a lot more than we expected, as per usual.
Well, when you take a month off, that's what you get. All right, so let's take a short break now. I can go and have a coughing fit, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what we've been playing recently. So, see you in a moment. Welcome back. For our second segment, we're going to be talking about what we've been playing recently, and perhaps not so recently as well. So, what have you been up to, Chris?
The past month of my life has been consumed by Nippon Ichi's Destiny Connect.
Ah, yes. Let's hear it.
Which I'm absolutely loving.
Cool.
And it won't surprise you because everyone else hated it, right? Like it got like savaged. Like I haven't seen a review for it above a 7. But it's just a classic example of like appreciating a game on its own merits. So, Destiny Connect is a clunky, low-budget mess. Mm-hmm. And I love it. Yep. So, the Switch version runs like shit. Looks like it's like smeared with Vaseline. It's like hard to look at. But it's just so endearing. Like, this is clearly just an example of like, someone had an idea for a new IP, which, once again, new IPs are to be celebrated. Mm-hmm. Someone had an idea for a new IP and just tried to make this thing on a shoestring budget.
Yep.
It uses the Unreal Engine, which does not run well on the Switch. Because it uses the Unreal Engine, like, the camera's a little wonky, the movement's a little wonky. Like, yes, you have to get used to playing it. Like, the first area, like, the house you start the game in, is like, I was straight up getting, like, motion sick, trying to, like, pan the camera around. Like, once you realize that it's one of those games, and this is something that happens often with Unreal Engine games, you're not really supposed to analog control your character. You're kind of supposed to walk forward and then pan the camera where you want to walk to.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? Because it's a holdover from the fact that the Unreal Engine is initially designed to run first-person shooters.
Yes, yeah.
So it takes a lot of programming work to get around that, which not everyone who uses the Unreal Engine realizes. So it takes a little bit to realize how to really control Destiny Connect. But otherwise, it's just a really delightful, charming JRPG in a way that, like, rarely gets made anymore, which is
I'm sorry, a what?
I'm sorry, a turn-based role-playing game. A turn-based role-playing game in a style that really doesn't get made very often anymore, which is to say, like, you're just a plucky group of kids on an adventure.
Yeah.
Like, there's no brooding teenagers and no hefty romantic subplots, and everything's just really cute. And so you're just like kids, it almost feels a bit like a playable like Pixar movie, or I would compare it almost to a Laika film. You're this adorable, like, plucky girl and her nerdy but cowardly best friend and the robot that her dad built, who is also a time machine, and you're going on an adventure to try to save everybody from household appliances that have become sentient and gone haywire. And it's just really cute. And there's a heavy time travel element. So, like, as you go throughout the game, you're going to the past to try to, like, undo the bad things that have happened, and you go back to the present, and then you have to deal with, like, the butterfly effect repercussions of, like, the things you did in the past. Then you go all the way to the future, and you meet a strange lady who's definitely not future you. Oh, wait, she definitely is. Like, so far, my party consists of me, my best friend, the robot my dad built, my dad from 30 years ago as a child, and my son from 30 years in the future.
Nice.
It's really, really cool. It's a lot of fun. And it's very simple. So, like, when you play it, you have to kind of engage with it on its own terms and understand that, like, almost like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, like, it was very much designed to be like a My First RPG.
Okay.
So the mechanics are extremely simple. It's not really challenging, but it's also just nice to have a very classic turn-based 3-player party role-playing game to play.
Yeah.
The big mechanical, like, hook up is that your robot is, like, the key to your party. And if the robot dies, it's game over. Like, the kids can get knocked out and get revived, but if the robot dies, it's game over. Because the robot's the time machine. So if he gets knocked out, you can't come back to the present ever. Yeah. The robot, as you progress through the game, you find gears that give him different forms. And the forms essentially allow him to change job classes mid-battle.
Okay.
So, like, he starts in Guardian form, which is just like classic tank. But then the next form you get is like a cool firefighter like form for him that allows him to strip buffs off of enemies and heal. So it's a bit of like a white mage kind of thing. Then the next thing you get is outlaw form, which is a cowboy outfit for him, and that has like it's like the thief. So, like, you can steal money. You have a move that if you use it increases drop rates at the end of battle. So, like, allows you to manipulate, like, the rewards you receive from fights. So it's a great form to use when you're grinding because you can increase experience, money, or drops. And then there's a boxer form, which is basically like a ninja form, where it's like there's a lot of like speed and dodge related buffs that you have to try to play with. There's 2 more that I haven't unlocked yet, but I think one of them's a samurai based on like some of the abilities I can see. Because you can see the grid for all the forms, even though you haven't earned them yet. So I'm thinking it's like a samurai form. And I think the last one's a chef, and I just remember that from seeing pictures online of it. But it's really fun. The robot levels up differently than the other characters do because he can't get equipment. Yeah. So like the way you make him more powerful, he levels up and gets general stats as he levels up, but he can't be equipped with equipment. So what you do for him is you get parts that are dropped by the enemies you take down. Then you have to go to shops to build gears, and then like you plug them in to like he has a grid with like, you know, you can't unlock one ability to unlock the one before it. And then you work through this grid to unlock his different stat boosts and skills. And then there's different qualities of parts. You can build silver, bronze, silver, or gold parts. So like as the game progresses, you're not only unlocking new abilities, but rebuilding the parts to swap them out for higher quality parts later to get better stat boosts. So it's if you're like a grinder like me, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. Like I said, the low budget nature of it's really very clear. Because of the time travel, like you just end up exploring the town like over and over and over in like different eras. Like there's not actually many environments at all. I'm like 12 hours deep into it, and I've really only seen like 3 environments because I just keep going back to them in like different eras. Right. And there's like not a ton of enemies. It's just a lot of recolors with like expanded stats. Like this game was made on the cheap, but like it's just so charming and cute. And like I said, it feels very old school in like a Super Nintendo way.
Oh, sounds great.
And it's really just scratching the right itch right now.
Nice. Good. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying that. I know you were looking forward to that. I've got that on my shelf as well. I don't know when I'll get to it, but yeah, it's always looked really charming. So yeah, I'm glad it's sort of living up to expectations, or at least providing something that you want to spend some time with. So
it's cozy. It's a really cozy game. So I'm just kind of appreciating that right now.
That's what you want sometimes, isn't it? You just want something you can relax with and not have to think too hard about. You can just let it wash over you and enjoy it. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly for children, but I also don't care.
Who gives a shit, man? If it's fun, if you enjoy it, it doesn't matter who it's for.
That's right. It's for me. If I'm enjoying it, it's for me.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Anything else you've been up to then?
Not anything I could speak to in as much detail. I'll save it for the next episode.
Fair enough. Okay, so those of you who are following MoeGame.net will know that at the time of recording, I've just finished the first cover game feature of 2020, which was the visual novel Lamination, which was a lot of fun. So be sure to check that out if you want an absolutely ridiculous, bizarre non sequitur of a visual novel. That was tons of fun. But my next project is a big one, which is the Atelier mega feature, which is covering a whole shitload of Atelier games over the course of the next however long it takes. Before I started on that, then I wanted to take the opportunity to sort of play through a few sort of smaller games. And as it happened, there were a couple that I had review copies of that I wanted to make sure I covered before I got too stuck into anything else, and a few things that I've sort of returned to over time. So I just want to sort of mention a few little things that I've looked at, and I've written about these recently and made some videos about some of these recently as well. But I think it's worth talking about them now as well. So first one I want to mention is Coffee Talk, which so this is a narrative game from an Indonesian developer called Touhou Productions. They were previously known for more sort of mechanic-centric games. They did a series called Infectinator, which I think I've heard of before, but I've never actually played myself. I think it started as a Flash game series, but then subsequently became sort of much bigger. They've been around since about 2009, apparently. So, and just sort of quietly doing things that people have been enjoying over the last years. But this is quite interesting to me because, like you mentioned with Little Town Hero earlier and Game Freak's kind of culture of doing internal game jams and that sort of thing, that's exactly how this game was produced as well. So they did an internal game jam in December of 2017, and the guy who does, the guy who did, I think he's moved on now, but the guy who did the PR for them, he wanted to make a game that kind of recreated the comfy feeling you had from having a nice hot drink, stepping away from everything you're supposed to be doing, and just sort of chilling out with a nice cup of coffee or something like that. And he wanted to recreate that feeling in a game, and he kind of fleshed that out over the course of this game jam, and came up with this narrative game where you run a coffee shop in late night Seattle. But it's sort of Shadowrun style late night Seattle, and so Seattle is populated by orcs and werewolves and vampires and elves and all that sort of thing. And yeah, it's just a really cool game. If you enjoyed stuff like VA11 Hall A Valhalla, the cyberpunk bartending game, it's very heavily based on that. And in fact, they sort of consulted with the developers of that during their development, because they were, and I've covered all this in my article about it, but they were sort of concerned that they weren't making enough of a game. But the guys behind Valhalla basically went, don't worry about it. We had the same concerns. We made what we wanted to make, and the people who enjoyed it really enjoyed it. So it's what we've been saying. It's coming to an experience on its own terms, enjoying it for what it is, not what it isn't. And from a developer's perspective, it's a case of designing your game in that way, sort of designing a game to be what you want it to be, rather than trying to shoehorn something in. And if that may well mean that it's not necessarily going to appeal to everyone. Like I know, for example, that this game probably won't appeal to you, for example, because you prefer games that have a bit more in the way of mechanics and things to do and that sort of thing. But by doing that, the developers are being truer to their original vision, and in the process, they're going to attract an audience that respects and understands that vision as well. And it's just a game that I really, really respect, because they obviously had a clear creative vision for what they wanted to achieve, and they have absolutely nailed it with that game. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I watched your video on it, and I was just kind of spellbound by, obviously, the presentation and kind of what it's trying to do, and kind of inspired by that kind of story of them being encouraged to make the game they want to make, because the purest vision of what you want to do is what you should always be making, right? That's the only way to be successful. Don't make a compromised product. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing that's only sort of really possible when you're doing something independently. Like, that wouldn't have been possible if they were working under a larger publisher or something like that. And that's the real strength of independent development, and they're taking full advantage of that. So that's great, and I'm glad it's been successful for them as well, because it's had really great reviews. There's been a lot of people talking about it online. I've seen loads of fan art. I've seen loads of shipping of the vampire and the werewolf character, who everyone has decided are gay, despite there being no indication of that in the game itself. But they're a vampire. When people see cute boys sitting together, you know how things are. How the internet works.
But yeah, it's a cool game. I was really impressed with that. I wasn't sure what to expect, because I'd seen sort of the early screenshots and stuff and thought, oh, that looks nice. But I wasn't sure if it was going to feel like a Valhalla ripoff, and it doesn't. It makes itself distinct. Sort of the vibe is different. The focus of the story is a bit different. But yeah, again, that was a nice, relaxing, comfy game that I really enjoyed. Okay. Next one I want to mention, again, I've written about this and made a video on it recently, but again, I want to mention it again, which is 1980X.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. 1980X is really interesting to me. I sort of vaguely, passively heard about it now and then. I think I'd seen it on the eShop as I was scrolling past, because the PC version came out quite a while back now, I think. But the Switch version launched like a week ago or something like that.
Sure. And
I happened to be at home visiting my parents, and my brother was across from the States. So I was at home visiting my parents, and he was there, and it was an opportunity for the whole family to get together and so on. So, and I'd taken my Switch with me, as I take it everywhere these days. And my brother happened to mention, oh, have you seen this game 1980X? And I said no, and he sort of said that he'd heard about it and it was supposed to be really cool and so on. And it turns out that someone he used to work with on Electronic Gaming Monthly is on the translation team and so on. So that's how he had ended up hearing about it. But I saw it in the eShop and it was like £8 or something like that. So I downloaded it and I thought, oh, I'll give this a go. And it's a fantastic experience. Again, it's something you kind of have to approach on its own terms. And that's kind of difficult with this one, because it kind of subverts itself in some ways.
Okay.
Because it's kind of marketed on the nostalgia for old arcade games. So the premise of 1980X is, right, look, there's these 5 awesome arcade games that they're not recreated, so they're not ports of anything. They are loving homages to specific types of arcade games. So there's an homage to the scrolling beat-em-up, which we'll be talking about later. There's an homage to sort of R-Type and Gradius. There's an homage to the Vanishing Point Racer. There is an homage to sort of platforming, hack and slash, sort of vaguely Shinobi-style gameplay. And then finally, there's a first-person dungeon crawler. But the point of the game is not those games. Those games are fleshed out nicely and they're mechanically very solid. They're presented beautifully. They use this sort of enhanced retro concept that we've talked about before, where they look like how you would like to remember games from that era looking, but they didn't actually look like that. And they're beautiful. They're beautiful, absolutely fantastic little games in their own right. But they are not the point of 1980X. The point of 1980X is its story. And 1980X is basically an hour-long film, presented in pixel art with a lovely soundtrack in which these arcade games crop up at various relevant moments in the story, and they tend to be quite symbolic in many ways. And at the time of recording, the story isn't finished. The intention from the beginning was always for it to be a two-part game, with the first part sort of introducing the setting and the concepts and so on, and then the story reaching its conclusion in the second part. And they haven't made the second half yet, but it's fully funded and everything. The whole thing was a Kickstarter project, but they wanted to release this first episode first of all, so people can kind of get into what the game's all about, get a feel for it, understand what they're trying to achieve with it, and that sort of thing. And although it's, for some people, it's a bit frustrating that it kind of stops relatively abruptly at the end with a to be continued. In some ways, the fact that the story isn't finished is quite interesting, because it encourages you to think about it and to think back over what you've just seen, maybe to play it again because it's only an hour long in total, and to sort of look for things, look for clues about what it's actually about. And there are lots of little things in the game that you could interpret in different ways. And it's just really interestingly put together in that way. It's a game that has genuinely been designed as both a work of art and a game that is mechanically solid as well. So the artistic side of things is in the presentation and the story and the message it's trying to convey. But the interactive components of the game are clearly designed by people who know what they are doing with game design as well.
So can you play the games?
Yes,
when
you
you
can.
Want to? And are they like, how fleshed out are they? Like, how much game is there to the games?
In most cases, it's like a level.
Okay.
So, for example, the story starts with the opening cutscene from the beat 'em up game, and you get the intro sequence, and then you get the first level, which is fighting through sort of some city streets, and then eventually you're fighting up towards there's like the end point of the level is a hospital, which I think is one of the things that is symbolic. And what happens towards the end of that level is that there's a character sitting up on a wall, and he jumps down and obviously starts fighting you, but the camera pans up at that point, so you can sort of hear things that are still going on, but it kind of moves on with the story at that point.
Okay.
But then there's some hands-off story sequences that are sort of introducing like the main character and the setting and that sort of thing, and like the whole the sort of main concept of it is this kind of disaffected teenager who is going through a turbulent time in their life. They're not explicit about what the actual issue is, but it's something to do with his father. His father is either dead or absent, or something terrible has happened. And this kid finds meaning in video games. And so, like, after this first sequence, he finds his way to this grotty old rundown arcade in the middle of nowhere. And he goes down there. And they discover that there's other misfits who don't sort of fit in society there. They're all playing games, they're all chatting, they're all finding some sort of meaning from this shared experience there. And they decide that they want to see if they can fit in. They want to see if they can find meaning from this. And at that point, they decide to play the space game. They decide to play the shoot 'em up. And then you play the shoot 'em up. So you play through a whole level of the shoot 'em up. You go from the start through to the boss. You beat the boss. Once you've done that, then the story moves on, and so on. So it's basically structured like that.
Okay.
But there are a few instances throughout where kind of the story sort of crosses over with the games as well. So, for example, when you're playing the Vanishing Point Racer bit, the first part of that is as you would expect. So you're sort of racing, you're reaching checkpoints, you're trying to reach the checkpoints before the timer runs out. Towards the end of that sequence, you go into a long tunnel. And when you come out the tunnel, the checkpoint you hit there, it sends your timer up to like a ridiculously high level. So like instead of just like giving you an extra minute on the clock or something like that, it gives you like an extra 240 seconds or something like that. And as you're playing this section where the timer has gone up to that part, the protagonist is starting to give a speech while you're still playing that game. and it's a speech about what this game means to him and how he's sort of found meaning from these experiences that he is in control of, and that sort of thing. But then towards the end of it, as your time is running out in the game, he is starting to talk about always having to come back to reality and things bringing him crashing down to reality and that sort of thing. And that happens exactly as your time runs out in the game. And it's just like a really beautifully scripted moment and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's just a wonderfully presented game. Again, it's not going to be for everyone because, like I say, it kind of sells itself on one thing and then provides something different. And not everyone is going to like that. But it is just such an incredible work of art. It is a really wonderful piece of interactive art that, yeah, really deserves some support, I think. And I'd very much like to see where that's going from there.
Yeah, it sounds super interesting. It also sounds like it lands super close to home.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't spoil the details of the final sequence, but sort of the last bit in the dungeon crawler, there's some pretty real stuff going on there.
Yeah,
let's just say that. But yeah, it lands very close to home, and I'm sure it will do for a lot of people who are listening to this as well. So it's worth experiencing if you're open to that kind of experience. And I think the last thing I want to mention today then is sort of a complete change of pace from that. And actually a game that I've been enjoying in one form or another since 2013. I just looked up. Which is a game I still don't know how to pronounce the name of. Which is Croixleur, I think is how you pronounce it. Which is spelled Croixleur.
The X is definitely silent.
Yeah. It's not a real word. It's not a real word. It just looks like a French word, but it's not a real word. But yeah, if you've not come across this game before, this was originally one of the relatively early Japanese doujin games that came west. There was a company, I don't know if they still exist actually, but there was a company called New Media a while back. I think they might have got absorbed into Playism at some point. Playism certainly seems to handle most of the stuff they used to do. But this was one of their early releases, and I covered it back when I was working on a site called Games Are Evil that doesn't exist anymore. But this was originally released, and it was originally designed as an homage to Devil May Cry's Bloody Palace mode. So it's basically a string of monster arenas. So it's like a circular arena full of monsters. You have to defeat them as quickly as possible and make your way through this entire sequence of levels as quickly as you can, defeating them as quickly as you can. But over the course of the last, I guess, 7 years at this point, it's been developed and expanded and refined. The version we have now is called Crawler Sigma. And so the original game had just one playable character. There's now 4. There's now collectible weapons that each have their own special abilities. There's now multiple ways to play. So as well as the original timed story mode, which is a kind of sort of arcade style experience, there's a score attack mode, there's a time attack mode, there's a survival mode, there's like specific challenges to do and that sort of thing. And the game as it exists now is a really, really solid hack and slash game. That's just a lot of fun to play. And I just picked up the Switch version recently because it was on sale, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good game to have on portable. And it is. But yeah, it's just a really fun game because it's not overly complicated, but it can get quite technical. So the actual basic mechanics are very simple to understand. It's pretty much attack, move, and dash. And it's a game that's all about sort of cancelling moves into other moves. So like you do your combo, then you do a dash to cancel out of the wind down animation from the combo, so you can keep yourself going as much as possible. And it's all about figuring out the best ways to defeat specific types of enemies as efficiently and quickly as possible. And so in the basic story arcade mode, you have a time limit of 15 minutes to get through the whole thing. That's way more than you need. But in order to get the true ending, you have to do the whole thing in less than 10 minutes. So you need at least 5 minutes remaining on the clock when you beat the final boss. to get the true ending. Which is something I've not managed to do until this week. So I first played this game, like I say, back in 2013, and I've only just managed to sort of master it enough to be able to do this. So there's a ton of replay value and staying power in this game. It's a lot of fun. It's got a really nice kind of arcade feel to it. And so it sort of uses a lot of the kind of ideas that I would typically associate with like Sega games in particular. So like big numbers on the screen and sort of big countdown timers and prominent score displays, and everything you do kind of showers you with gold coins, and there's things exploding and anime girls shouting and that sort of thing. And it's just a really one of those games that's just really pleasing to play. Like you play it and you just think, I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying this.
It's important.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I've just sort of rediscovered that game recently. So, yeah, definitely worth looking at. I know that the PC version they re-released recently with all of the new content that they added in the console versions.
Oh, okay.
And so, as like all of the versions are now have sort of complete parity with each other. So there's no one sort of best version anymore. It runs brilliantly on Switch as well, so it maintains a full 60 frames a second on Switch as well. So you don't need to worry about that being like the inferior version or anything like that. It's just a really nice arcade game that I enjoy playing a lot. So
I know Limited Run pressed that on the PS4 and Vita, so I've kind of been hoping that the Switch version would get a similar treatment done.
Yeah, I'd really like a package copy of this on Switch. That'd be really good, because it's like I say, it's been a game that I've sort of come back to every couple of years or so since 2013, and I still really love it. So cool. Right, I think that's probably everything we want to talk about for now, aside from the things that are going to come up in our third segment. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about beat-em-ups. So we'll see you in a moment. Welcome back. For our third segment, we wanted to talk about beat-em-ups. Now, we thought this would be a nice, simple, easy topic to talk about. And then Chris went and made 3 pages of notes for it. So this may be a lengthy discussion. But yeah, beat-em-ups are a genre of game that we both enjoy a great deal. And they've kind of made a bit of a comeback recently.
Yeah,
there was quite a period of time when beat-em-ups just weren't a thing. But over sort of the last few years or so, they've been making a gradual resurgence, both in their original arcade forms and in the case of new games as well. So we thought it'd be interesting to talk a bit about the genre, what appeals about it to us, a bit of the history of it, our past experiences with it, and our more recent experiences with it as well. So I think so probably a good place to start then, for those who are unfamiliar with sort of the definition of the genre. Let's sort of nail down some origins and some definitions of what a beat 'em up is then. So to you then, what is a beat 'em up? What defines a beat 'em up?
Beating up things.
Obviously, yeah.
Finding punching photo booths and finding roast beef inside the photo booths. And apples on plates inside of garbage cans.
Mm-hmm, of course.
I mean, I specifically, I mean, there's kind of side-scrolling beat-em-ups and belt-scrolling beat-em-ups, and I kind of more associate the genre with the belt-scrolling beat-em-ups, which is to say the ones where you can walk not just left and right, but toward and back.
Yes.
Depth. There's layers of depth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more like what I think of. I mean, there are obviously many glorious side-scrolling beat-em-ups as well. The Ninja Warriors series and whatnot. But like the big genre we talk about is always the belt-scrolling beat-em-ups. So I specifically think about that kind of... I guess the best way to describe that field of motion as a ribbon with like that sense of 3D space. So like I very much associate that field of motion and forward and backward movement to and from the camera. It's really just up and down, in terms of the way it's actually being controlled. But generally speaking, the stage design is always presented with a very specific kind of isometric appearance, so that there's a feeling of depth to that movement instead of instead of verticality. It's a feeling of depth.
Yeah, so it was kind of an early incarnation of what we tend to describe as 2.5D now, isn't it?
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I mean the defining features that I've kind of listed here are belt scrolling. So you're basically moving like you're on a conveyor belt. So you move forward a bit, you have to achieve something, then you move forward a bit more, you have to achieve something else, you move forward a bit more, and so on. But the main thing is you're sort of constantly moving forward. That's one defining feature. The second one I've put down is this 2.5D movement, which you've already covered there. The next one is combo attacks. So the ability to press a button and have several things happen. Now this is one that you might not necessarily agree with immediately, given the nature of some of the early games, which I want to mention in just a moment before we move on to sort of some of our most defining experiences. But as the beat 'em up exists today, and as it is most commonly understood by people today, combo attacks tend to be a big part of that. So they tend to take the form of you press the button to attack and your character will throw a punch. If that punch connects, if you press the attack button again, he will do a different punch. If that punch connects, you press it again, he will do a different punch again, and so on. And depending on the beat 'em up, there may be sort of different strings of combos you can do with that. So for a lot of people, that is a defining part of the genre.
Yeah, certainly the most popular and the most well-known ones.
Yeah.
And especially as the way Capcom came to kind of define them.
Yes. And along with that, we have a concept called hit stun, which is where if that initial hit connects, you stun the enemy for a split second, and that provides you with the opportunity to unleash those additional moves. And for a lot of people, again, this is a really critical part of the genre, because it's what allows that distinctive style of attacking. It's what allows those combo attacks to happen, and it's what provides a sort of tactile feeling to the experience as well. It gives you a feeling of physicality, like your attacks are actually connecting with things, and that's really important to this sort of thing.
Yeah, I would add, too, the importance of hit stun is tantamount to another really important aspect of the genre as a whole, which is like these games are essentially games about time and space management.
Yes.
It's how you prioritize which enemies you attack in what sequence, and play keep away and manage the space around you to keep it as safe as possible. Mm-hmm. And like manipulating the timing of that hit stun is a really important tactic to doing that.
Yes, absolutely. Because in most cases, what you can do is you can manipulate the arrangement of the enemies in such a way that one attack can stun multiple enemies at the same time. And so it's often really important to do that in order to manage the enemies that are around you at any given moment. You have to sort of prioritize which are going to be the most dangerous targets, and then perhaps try and take out some of the less dangerous targets at the same time as keeping the most dangerous one off your back. And this comes in with another thing as well, which is the fact that in most cases a beat 'em up means that you need multiple hits to defeat both the enemy and the player. Now again, this is something that is not necessarily present in the very origins of the genre as commonly agreed. So let's talk a little bit about this before we move on to some of these key examples. So for a lot of people, if you look at sort of people tracking history of genre and that sort of thing, most people will point to Irem's Kung Fu as, if not the first beat 'em up, then the first game that was something approaching a beat 'em up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Kung Fu lacks a lot of these elements that we just described. So Kung Fu does have this kind of constant forward progression. It doesn't have 2.5D movement. It's just a side scroller. It doesn't have combo attacks. It doesn't really have hit stun. And in most cases, aside from the boss characters, it's just a single hit to defeat every enemy. You have two different moves in Kung Fu. You have a punch and a kick. But the only difference between them is their reach and how many points you score for using them. And so, like I say, that is commonly regarded as sort of the origin of this genre, but there's a lot of things that hadn't been introduced at all yet or hadn't been refined just yet. Now, another early example that I want to bring up as well that is a little bit different. probably a slightly less well-known one, and this is the Bruce Lee game that was on the 8-bit computers.
Oh yeah, I
around the same time.
About this.
So Bruce Lee, the game, it was essentially a platform action adventure, but what was noteworthy about it was a lot of platform games at the time didn't give you the ability to attack, or if you could attack, it was mostly sort of the Pac-Man model, where you'd like pick up an item and that would make you invincible for a short period, and then you just run through enemies to destroy them. What Bruce Lee did that I hadn't seen before at that time was it gave you the ability to attack. So you had you could press the fire button on the joystick to throw a punch, or you could press the fire button on the joystick in a direction and he would do a flying kick. And there were two antagonists in Bruce Lee who were constantly sort of chasing you throughout it. There was a ninja and there was a sumo wrestler called Yamo. And they would follow you around and try and attack you. And it would take multiple hits to defeat you in Bruce Lee. And it would take multiple hits to defeat these enemies in Bruce Lee as well. And you could use the geography of the various screens to your advantage in Bruce Lee as well. That was one of the things that made it interesting. So rather than just proceeding along a linear path like you did in Kung Fu, Bruce Lee's screens were... They were platform game screens, basically. So you could climb up ladders, you could jump across gaps, you could fall down pits, and you could use those things in combat. So, for example, if you could see that the ninja was standing at ground level, just standing there waiting for you to come down, and there happened to be a gap in the platform you were standing on above him, you could drop down and land on his head and stun him, and then finish him off. And that was sort of a tactic I hadn't really seen in games at all at that point. And again, we're lacking some of those defining features we just talked about. But again, we're starting to get some of them. We're starting to see people experiment with these features with a way of representing physical combat in a game that I had... At the time I played Bruce Lee for the first time, which would have been, I don't know, like 1985 or so. At the time I played that for the first time, I hadn't seen games do that before. And so that was a really interesting experience for me at the time. So, I mean, what were your earliest experiences with beat-em-ups then?
Well, I was a Nintendo kid for sure. So, I mean, I just played a lot of Double Dragon back in the day. And I think in terms of, even before Capcom, our mention earlier in the episode of the Kunio-Kun collection, really, Technos defined this genre.
Yes, absolutely.
In its earliest days. So, between the Kunio-Kun series... Double Dragon, which is often considered part of the Kunio-Kun series, and Renegade, they essentially created everything we associated with this.
Yes.
So I just remember playing a ton of Double Dragon as a kid. The frustration of the pitfalls and the conveyor belts, and like there was just something about the presentation of it. I played a lot of video games as a kid, and I always kind of focused on like fantasy or sci-fi or just like off the wall stuff like Mario. But like here was this like gritty street experience, right? Like you're in a city that's recognizable as a city, and like I'm not shooting aliens or orcs. I'm just like punching shirtless guys. And then, like, they drop a chain, and then I pick the chain up, and I'm smacking them with a chain. Like, the viscerality of this idea of this, like, street combat experience and, like, Double Dragon, like, always kind of stuck with me. Like, in the late 80s, early 90s, it's like, this was cool. Like, this was something that was cool. It was tough. So... I just always remember, like, wanting to play Double Dragon, but I never owned it as a kid. I always rented it or, like, played it in friends' houses. But talking about Double Dragon and Kunio-Kun is kind of a good segue into kind of talking about kind of the way I contextualize these sorts of games in my head, which is, I think there's two very different schools of design when we talk about beat-em-ups, right? So there's what I call arcade design and home design.
Yes.
So an arcade designed beat 'em up is stuff like we associate Double Dragon or Final Fight, which is kind of, they come from this background of quarter munching. So like very, very tight difficulty that's kind of designed to eat your money in the arcade sense, but it just becomes frustrating in the home sense. and that they're kind of transient experiences where it's just kind of like you sit down and play them, you get through the game, maybe you want to chase a high score, but that's it. They're very straightforward. Home-designed beat-em-ups take that arcade experience and usually build upon it in an effort to kind of pad out and justify the investment of the purchase of the game. And we usually see that in terms of more complex mechanics, things like RPG-style progression, character development, shops with money, items to buy, stuff like that. So essentially, if we compare Double Dragon, which is a very straightforward beat-em-up experience, to the original River City Ransom, which had leveling up, stats, and shops, we kind of can see those two schools of design kind of diverge there. They're not hard and fast rules, obviously. Streets of Rage was developed by Sega for the home, but it has none of these RPG elements. It's just a straight experience. And there are arcade games, such as specifically any of Capcom's medieval-focused arcade games had light leveling up mechanics. But not to the depth of like choosing your stat allocations and like buying new moves. It was just kind of like your power and appearance would change, and it was usually tied to score. So like there's room for trickle across these different fields, but I think talking about them in terms of these two design sensibilities kind of gives us a ground base to talk about different types of these sorts of games.
I think there's another interesting distinction here as well, which is the arcade port that has been designed for the home. Versus an arcade emulation. And I think this is an important one to consider, and I've been quite conscious of this playing the Capcom beat-em-up collection. And in most cases, it's a very simple distinction between whether or not you have infinite credits. Because if you have infinite credits, you can brute force your way through to any of these games very easily. I mean, it might take you hundreds of credits, but if you have infinite credits available to you on a home port, you can get to the end. When I think back to one of the first actual beat-em-ups, as we define them, that I played, which was Double Dragon 2 on the Atari ST, in that game, you have 2 credits. You have 2 credits, and if you're playing 2-player, you use both of them. So, my earliest experience with beat-em-ups, because I didn't have an arcade anywhere near me, my sole exposure to beat-em-ups for quite a long time was the home versions of arcade games. So I played Double Dragon 2 on the Atari ST, and I played Ninja Gaiden on the Atari Lynx, which is a really good port, actually. Not talked about at all, but this is the original arcade version of Ninja Gaiden, not
That's awesome.
Yeah, not
Everyone forgets that Ninja Gaiden was originally a beat-em-up.
Yeah, and the Atari Lynx port was fantastic. But again, you had limited credits, so there was no guarantee that you were going to get it to the end. And that gave that game longevity, because as you played it more, you got better at it, and you could get further on each credit. Whereas if you're able to just virtually credit feed your way through a game, there's not necessarily the incentive to do that, especially if the game doesn't reset your score. Like, for example, I was playing King of Dragons the other day, which I'm sure will come up again shortly. I was playing King of Dragons the other day and credit feeding my way through it, and your score does not reset in that, and it doesn't even do the thing that a lot of arcade games do, particularly Capcom ones, where it adjusts the last digit of your score to say how many coins you've used. And so in King of Dragons, there's no distinction score-wise between someone who has played it through on a single credit and someone who has spent the equivalent of like 25 quid on it or whatever. And for me, that kind of gives me a bit of conflict, because I enjoy playing the game, but in some ways it makes me sort of question kind of the meaning of the experience, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so
from a design perspective, in terms of raw gameplay design, it's a problematic design.
Yeah. So for me, I actually tend to find that perfect arcade conversions aren't always the most desirable thing when it comes to these games.
Sure.
And if you do have a perfect arcade conversion, I prefer playing through with some sort of limitation that I place on myself. So, for example, if I'm going to play like Final Fight or something, I'll say, right, I'm going to give myself 9 credits. That's all I'm going to get. And see how far I can get. For me personally, that's how I prefer to play. I guess if you've got infinite credits, it's nice to have that option rather than being forced into playing in a particular way. But yeah, I know that there's going to be people out there who will just credit feed their way through to the end, declare the game an incredibly shallow experience, and then never play it again.
Yeah. One of my favorite things, it was something Capcom games did a lot in the Dreamcast era when they had straight arcade ports, was a bit of both. Mm-hmm. So they would gate the amount of credits you had based on how much you played.
Yes. So, there's a lot of shoot 'em ups do this as well. Yeah.
You had to unlock additional credits by playing more. So as it started with you having to get better and better and better, and then you could choose how many credits you wanted in the option screen based on how many you had unlocked.
Yes.
So like your skill and familiarity would grow, and then by the time you were good at the game, then you could infinite credit it just to have like a therapeutic, no stress playthrough later if you wanted. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really fun way to handle it. But yeah, I agree. It can be problematic, but it all depends on your reasons for playing the game. And like part of the reason I fell in love with belt scrolling beat 'em ups like later in life. Like yeah, like I liked Final Fight and Double Dragon as a kid, but like I really didn't fall like deeply in love with this genre until as an adult or in my late teens when I started playing with emulation. And just being able to play the arcade versions of these games on MAME in the home. Yeah. And like I came to consider them like a very therapeutic process, like for me, because I could just credit feed them. And like as we've discussed many times, like different people play games for different reasons, and one of the reasons I play games is art appreciation. So like I like an opportunity to credit feed because I love to just be able to see the whole game, see every background, see every enemy, see every boss without having to stress myself about whether or not I can actually get there and achieve it. Like so like credit feeding is like to me a way to experience the entirety of the game, see all the art, hear all the music, do all the things without being stressed. So like I really found playing belt scrolling beat 'em ups with infinite credits just a low stress therapeutic way to burn an hour when I had a bad day. Like they were fun and visceral, they were repetitive without being boring. So you could get in a rhythm of enjoying them, see all the stuff, hear all the music. So like I'm always at odds with how I feel about that because the part of me that loves analyzing mechanics and design knows that credit feeding is garbage. But but at the same time, I've had so many positive experiences with playing beat 'em ups that way.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that ties in with this is what I mentioned when we talked about hit stun, which is that beat 'em ups have an element of physicality to them, don't they?
Yes.
So there is a feeling of what you're doing with your hands having a direct impact with what's happening on the screen and getting really satisfying audio-visual feedback on what is going on. And I think part of what you're describing there is to do with that as well. So the therapeutic side of the beat 'em ups doesn't matter about the score, doesn't matter about the credit feeding. You are getting a feeling of satisfaction, of release, of catharsis, of whatever, just from the simple pleasure of that Capcom whoosh noise.
Yeah. It's amazing how much some of these old beat 'em ups felt like they had rumble.
Yes.
Before rumble was a thing. The combination of the physicality on screen with the hit stun and the audio together creates such a connection in the brain to a feeling of that physical interaction.
Yeah. 16-bit beat 'em ups have some of the best sound effects in all of gaming.
Oh,
Just like Capcom stuff in particular, their punch and kick impact sounds are some of the most satisfying sounds I've ever heard, ever.
Yeah, it's true. And this translates to other genres, like very, very strong, like hit stun and like satisfying connection of audio to hit stun is one of the rubrics I have for like good games versus bad games.
Yeah.
Like one of my primary arguments against the early Assassin's Creed titles was that combat was dissatisfying because there was no feeling of hit stun.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's one of the things I use to, like, gauge where, like, it's why Ys games are, like, the best action RPGs. Because, like, the hit stun and the impact is so solid that, like, the combat is instantly satisfying. So, like,
yeah.
Beat 'em ups have mastered this, but the trickle effect to other genres is, like, so important.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, that, like you say, that's informed other genres. With the most obvious example, of course, is the fighting game, the one-on-one fighting game. Yep. And this is just a sort of aside, but I found it quite interesting looking back on this and doing a bit of research for this, that when I was growing up, the word beat 'em up was used to describe both beat 'em ups and fighting games.
Yes.
And I've said this to people online before, and they're like, what are you talking about? It seems from what I can make out that this was a thing that was fairly UK centric.
Okay, I've heard it before.
Yeah, so from various sources, I've seen that it was kind of a way that the UK games magazines of the late 80s and early 90s would express things. They were very keen on putting specific genre labels on things. And they enjoyed, like, the anything em-up, sometimes as a joke. But yeah, beat 'em up was a very established term that was basically any game that involved punching things was a beat 'em up, regardless of whether or not it scrolled or whether it was one-on-one. Now, sometimes they were distinguished as scrolling beat 'em ups and one-on-one beat 'em ups, which is the distinction we have today, but they were still both called beat 'em ups. With the advent of the internet and sort of global conversation about this sort of thing, that distinction has kind of gone away, and people tend to accept the beat 'em up fighting game divide now. But yeah, I just found that was quite an interesting thing, and a sort of cultural division almost, in terms of things there. I mean, it's a minor thing in the long term of things, but yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting.
They are important. I mean, they're integral to each other. Yeah, especially in, like, Capcom's universe, because let's not forget that Final Fight and Street Fighter take place in the same universe.
Yes, well, like, I mean, Final Fight was originally going to be Street Fighter 2, wasn't it?
Oh, I didn't know that. But that makes sense, because Street Fighter 1 has, like, level progression. Yeah. And, like, Street Fighter 1 isn't just what Street Fighter 2 became.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the story behind Final Fight is it was originally going to be the sequel to Street Fighter, which is partly why, if you look at things like the interface design of Final Fight and compare it to Street Fighter, things like the health bars and the score display and stuff are identical to Street Fighter 2. But then they subsequently developed Street Fighter 2 as its own specific thing and made Final Fight its own thing as well. So at some point they decided that, yes, these need to be two distinct experiences. But yeah, Final Fight was originally intended to be a sequel to Street Fighter.
Amazing. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, they're all they're all together, right? So Street Fighter Alpha introduced Final Fight characters into the Street Fighter universe, right? Saying that this has all been together. Like, I love it. Yeah. All right, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty of talking favorites.
Alrighty, go for it.
Yeah, so, like, I think one you mentioned earlier, like, my all-time favorite beat-em-up is Capcom's King of Dragons.
Yeah.
100%, for so many reasons. Like, formatively for me, there was a King of Dragons cabinet in the mall near my house. And my dad and I would go, and we would save our quarters up all month long, and then when it was time to go to the mall, so my mom and my little sister would go to the hairdresser, and my dad and I had to, like, kill an hour while my mom and my sister were at the hairdresser. Like, this was our go-to machine. Like, my dad and I playing King of Dragons, and I just remember, like, waiting for it. So, like, it's just, like, a deep personal memory for me, like, this genre and that game specifically. And then just from a visual perspective, like, King of Dragons kind of cemented that aesthetic that I find, like, most pleasing in games. Just, like, exaggerated, cartoony character designs, like a chunky softness, like bright, oversaturated colors. It just doesn't take itself too seriously. Like, it's kind of, all that stuff is what I like most about games. Like, when a game is like that. And that all kind of stemmed from my love of King of Dragons. It's also like a really clear example of Capcom experimenting with this obsession they had with melding the RPG with the beat 'em up.
Yeah.
And this would all eventually culminate in the greatest RPG beat 'em up crossover of all time, which was Capcom's Dungeons and Dragons series. But King of Dragons had some of these early examples of this, like exploring RPG classes, right? So like your characters weren't just like agile guy, middle range guy, large guy, which was like, that's pretty normal beat 'em up stuff. But like instead, like the classes were actual like classic tabletop role playing game classes. You had a warrior, a cleric, a mage, an elf, ranger, and in each of them had slightly different performance parameters based on their class. That being tied to one of the most distinguishing features of King of Dragons, that King of Dragons is a game with ranged combat.
Yeah.
It's a beat 'em up with ranged combat. Not just like you can pick up a gun or a knife to throw every now and then, which had been common in the genre for a long time, but every character in King of Dragons, when they swing their weapon, the weapon sends out either an energy wave or a magic burst or an arrow, and depending on which class you choose, the power and range of that energy shot is defined by who they are. So like the ranger has very long range because he's shooting with a bow, but his hits are like half as much as what the warrior can deal. So there's a real distinction there, like how you play the game, what character class you pick almost radically changes the way you approach the distance and the keep away play, which is a necessary part of the game. So it shifted the genre in interesting ways by introducing that kind of element of range, which I think makes it a really interesting and unique entry in the genre. And just overall, it's just a really pleasant game to play, right? Like massive bosses with cool things going on. That score you were mentioning that never resets. It never resets because your score is also your experience. And then you level up, which also changes the visual appearance of your shield and your weapon and the damage it does. So if that were to reset, there's no way to track that RPG level up mechanic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did a lot of different things. At the time, it was the first time I had ever played a beat 'em up that wasn't set in like a dirty city.
Mm-hmm.
Which was great. Like, wait, so like this game can combine the things I've learned to love about Double Dragon and Final Fight, but it combines it with a genre I love even more, a visual presentation I love even more. Now I'm blasting orcs with arrows instead of like punching dudes in leather jackets, and there's just something about that was like, for me, like super special.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think for me, again, I kind of sort of gravitated towards the non-standard ones at the time. But back on our Konami episode, we talked about the Asterix one, for example.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Konami's licensed ones are legendary.
Yeah, I mean, Konami's licensed game generally were all fantastic. So there was the Turtles one, there was the Simpsons one, and there was the Asterix one, which is probably the one I spent the most time with. Just because Asterix was the property that I'd spent the most time with as a kid. So I'd spent more time reading Asterix comics than I had sort of engaging with Turtles and The Simpsons at that point. So it was a game that I had a personal connection to. I liked the characters. It was a game that sort of had a lot of sort of series fan service to it as well. So there were lots of sort of cameos from characters that you'd seen in the books. And the art in that game was good enough that they were recognizable as well. So it was beautiful pixel art, wonderful character design. It was still obviously pixel art and sort of limited by the resolutions of the time, but the graphics in the game were recognizable enough to make it feel like you were playing one of the comics. But like even back then, it was obvious that there were certain things about that game that made it especially satisfying. So, like most of the other Konami games, again, it had very good hit stun. It had some interesting special moves. And it had an element of comedy as well, which I think it's not necessarily an essential part of this, but I think it's something that can make this genre quite effective, is having a comedic element to it as well.
Sure.
Sort of the situations you are in a beat 'em up are ridiculous. usually a one or two people against hundreds of enemies, which is absurd. And sort of my favourite examples from the past are the ones that kind of acknowledge this absurdity and allow you to do ridiculous things. So things like where in the Turtles game you could grab an enemy and you could throw them out of the screen and it would leave cracks in the camera. And in the Asterix game where you could pick someone up and it would do the thing they did in the comics where they just batter them back and forth over their head or swing them around their head and then fling them off over the horizon and that sort of thing. And just sort of acknowledging that absurd side of things as well, and sort of it really helped with kind of the feeling of making you feel superhuman, which I think is sort of part of this as well.
Yeah. It's funny how like challenging beat 'em ups can be, because like at the core they're like massive power fantasies. Like they're just about you being the best, right? Like the most invincible, toughest guy ever who can like wade through these crowds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played the Asterix game. I'm not a surprise. I don't think the original arcade version had a huge presence in the States. I do know that the Genesis port of it did come out in the States, but like, if you were American, like Asterix wasn't really a thing. So like when Asterix games came over, it was just like, we just thought they were a game. Like this was a game. Like we didn't really know it had unless you were like a comic guy who like understood and knew that, but like the general American public in like the general gaming community, when like an Asterix game came out, we just thought it was a game franchise.
Yeah. The other thing with Asterix is that there are a lot of Asterix games as well, and some of those were specific to consoles and nothing to do with that Konami arcade game as well. So. Which I found a bit frustrating back at the time, because I really liked that arcade game, but I think I mentioned before, because arcade culture was not really a thing in the UK, the only time you could play arcade games in the UK was when you went to the seaside.
Right.
And so it was pretty rare that I had the opportunity to play a lot of these games in their native habitats, because I lived sort of like in the middle of the most landlocked part of the UK it's possible to live in at the time. And so going to the seaside was a sort of a rare treat. And so these games became very special to me because I came to associate them with sort of nice experiences like family holidays and going somewhere nice and going somewhere with like nice weather or fun things to do, that sort of thing as well. So for me, I think sort of the beat 'em up genre has those sort of positive associations from outside the game as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that sort of ties in with what you were saying with your memories of King of Dragons as well. So you've got that childhood memory of playing that game under those circumstances and sort of having the opportunity to do that. And I bet that meant that you as a kid actually in some ways looked forward to your mum going shopping and getting their hair done and that sort of thing, because it meant that you could go and spend some time with your dad playing King of Dragons.
Absolutely, it did.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it did. Like it was like my dad and I would talk about it. like how many quarters do you have? Like, is this the weekend we take down the Minotaur? Like it was like a thing.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I mean that's arcade culture in general. Like, but beat 'em ups are such an integral part of arcade culture in the 80s and 90s. Well, I guess the 90s more than anything, right?
Yeah.
Like, but the earliest games were late 80s. But I always just associate, like, the two things I associate most with the arcade is the fighting game and the beat 'em up. Like, above anything else is the fighting game and the beat 'em up.
Yeah.
So, and it's always memories. It's always positive memories. The other thing I loved about beat 'em ups in the arcade was that they weren't a competitive experience.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not a highly competitive gamer at all. So like, I love fighting games, but like not nearly as much as I like the idea of like going to the arcade with my friend and playing with my friend to achieve a common goal together, or like heaven knows playing one of the old arcade Konami big cabinets for Turtles or X-Men, and with 3 of my friends all like jammed in there together. Like this is such an experiential thing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the other games I want to talk about are ones I didn't get to experience in the arcade as a kid, because they're just really bizarre or interesting examples that I discovered later during my like emulation obsession phases.
Yeah.
But but stuff like King of Dragons, the original Final Fight, and like Konami's X-Men were just so formative for me as a youth in terms of like positive memories, and like dialing that up to like my associations with video games in general, like integrally tied to the beat 'em up as the genre of the beat 'em up is like everything I love about gaming.
Yeah.
So, what are some other ones? I'm a Neo Geo guy, as we often talk about. So, like, I think it's cool to mention that SNK is often kind of like made fun of in their early days for kind of how Me Too a lot of stuff on the Neo Geo was, right? Like, World Heroes catches a lot of flack for being like a Street Fighter clone or whatever, stuff like that. And but they were right up there with the beat 'em up too, and like a lot of their beat 'em ups weren't necessarily like rip-offs of Final Fight and Streets of Rage. They one of the series they're perhaps best known for in that genre is the Sengoku series, which was unique in how like super Japanese it was, because it wasn't just like your like punk man fighting other punk mans in alleys. Like Sengoku had a weird Japanese like supernatural setting where you were like moving back and forth between like the spirit world and like the physical world, and you were fighting like hordes of like ghost samurais. So it had just a really unique aesthetic. It was totally different. It had some mechanical like niches that weren't present in like other games. So one of the things I associate always with beat 'em ups, not all of them obviously, but like the classics like Kunio-Kun and Final Fight is the temporary weapons you pick up. Right? Like, oh, you found a crowbar. Like, that crowbar has like 15 hits, so like make the most of it. Sengoku had that too, but it was always like swords. So like you could either get like a regular sword, a dual wielded sword, or like a giant nodachi. So it was always just cool because it just had like that super Japanese flavor. And you had like spirit transformations. You could turn into like different forms that had different movesets on like a temporary basis, which was something I had never experienced in those types of games before. And there's actually 3 Sengoku games. Sengoku 1 was 91, Sengoku 2 was 93. Sengoku 2 felt a lot like the first one. It had the transformations, except for you always had a sword in 2. So like someone in that design room sat down and they were like, what was the most fun part of Sengoku 1? When you got a sword. So Sengoku 2, you just always have a sword, which was awesome. But then there was a huge time gap. So like Sengoku 3 dropped in 2001. Which is 10 years after the first one. Incredible. It's like Sengoku 3 is a beautiful example of kind of like the magic of the Neo Geo. Like how long that console persisted and how amazing it was as a piece of hardware. Because if you compare visually and performance-wise Sengoku 1 to Sengoku 3, it's like, how is this on the same arcade hardware? Like, how? How is it even possible? It made huge improvements over it wasn't as clunky and slow. It was beautiful and fluid. It had these great combo attacks in the modern way we expect. It didn't have all the transformations and the weapons, but what it did have was 6 different playable characters, all with like radically different movesets and combo progressions and stuff. So it was just it's a really neat series, and I always love to point it out because it has a very specific Japanese flavor that not a lot of this genre has. Because being this like 80s genre, beat 'em ups tended to have this very much just like 80s American punk city feel. So Sengoku was like, no, this is very specifically like so Japanese, it's ridiculous. There's ninjas and samurai and like chanting in the background and yokai and like enemies with Tengu masks. So I always just appreciated it for that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not especially familiar with those ones, so they're ones I do want to have a look at. I think I've got some form of port of them somewhere, but I think it might be the crappy .mu versions, so I haven't really looked into those. But I have a feeling at least some of those are available in the Arcade Archive series as well, so I might have to investigate those at some point. Yeah,
they're available. But yeah, you really got to do yourself a favor and look up footage of 3. It is like it is in terms of like pixel art achievement, it is like, like 2001 pixel art still running on 1990 hardware. It's just, it's an absolute like masterwork.
Yeah.
Other stuff I really wanted to call out, and this is obviously, I'm making a specific effort not to like talk about Final Fight and Streets of Rage and the Konami stuff. Like, I don't want to talk about the stuff everyone's played, right? So like, I also want to talk about the DENJIN MAKAI series. Have you ever played any of the DENJIN MAKAI games?
I've never heard of this, so I'm interested to hear what these are.
So yeah, you should look them up. So DENJIN MAKAI, it's cheating, right? I only know DENJIN MAKAI from emulation.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, in the sphere of, like, beat-em-up fandom, like, DENJIN MAKAI is legendary. Because it's weird. It's just absolutely weird. They did not make their way west. The first one had a Super Nintendo port, but I don't think that made its way west either. This is a pretty much Japan-only franchise, which is a shame because they are amazing. They were developed by Winkysoft, which is a studio that perhaps is best known for their work on the Super Nintendo and Saturn-era Super Robot Wars games.
Right.
But, so, like, a lot of licensed work in their roster. They're not, like, a known entity, really. But these are original games they made. And they're kind of revolutionary in a lot of ways. Specifically, there were special moves in these games.
Mm-hmm.
And now, it was very common in beat-em-ups to have, like, a special move. Right? Like, if you pressed jump and attack together in Final Fight, you would do, like a carousel kick that would, like, clear the screen or whatever. Like, it wasn't uncommon. But the difference between DENJIN MAKAI and other beat-em-ups of the era was that DENJIN MAKAI had multiple special moves tied to a bar that would recharge as you fought.
Right.
Usually in beat-em-ups, it was kind of typical for these special moves to either drain your own life bar, so you had to make a gamble decision whether or not, like, am I in a situation where I can sacrifice some of my life bar knowing that the enemies coming are going to take far more of it away if they get to me, essentially. Like, there's that game you play. Or you just had, like bombs and a shoot 'em up. You just had, like, 3 of them per life or whatever.
Yeah.
DENJIN MAKAI had a bar that would refill fighting game style as you played. So you could actually incorporate the special moves into your combos and your strategy because they weren't finite entities. And every character had a couple different ones that you could pull off based on button combinations, like pulling back and doing the special move or holding up and doing the special move. So you could actually deploy them tactically based on the situations you were in.
Yeah.
And when I say different characters, I mean 6 different characters, which was, for 1994, that was a pretty big roster in a game. And once again, going back to, like, some of the other games I've talked about today and drawn attention to, DENJIN MAKAI was so radically different because of how weird it was. It wasn't a typical, like, gritty city brawler. It wasn't even medieval. It wasn't even solid sci-fi. It just had this bizarre anime, comic-inspired, like, slightly cyberpunk, but, like, in the modern day, but then there's just, like, mutants and robots and sci-fi stuff, just, like, all mashed together in this, like, big, brightly colored, like, anime soup. So, like, out of the 6 characters you could play as, there was, like, classic, like, tough guy. There was, like a girl cop who was, like, also, like, a martial artist. But then there was, like, and like, a big wrestler dude. And those were, like, your 3 standard characters that, like, made sense. But then there was, like a beast girl with, like, a mace that could extend, who was, like, based on, like, the Sengoku, like, Legend of the Monkey King character archetype. There was a cyborg, like, robot guy, and just, like, an alien, like, bio beast that looked like looked like a monster from Guyver. And so it was just weird. Like, you could be these, like, crazy characters with varied move sets. So, like, there's always a ton of reason to keep playing DENJIN MAKAI because, like, every character felt so different because they weren't even constrained by, like, what was possible in reality because, like, I'm a robot now. Like, what can he do? That's different? So it was just this combination of setting and varied and interesting character design, sense of humor regarding like some of the bosses and like the way they act and behave, like just really accentuated and overblown animation. It's just really like one of the highest quality like examples of this like 90s era of the genre.
Yeah, I'm just watching footage of it now. This looks amazing.
It's so good. It's so good. And then there was a sequel, Denjin Makai 2, that had 8 playable characters.
Oof.
And they got even more, like, so then they added a ninja, like a Chinese karate master that also had like magic flaming cards that he could throw.
Yeah.
The monster, the Bio Beast monster from the first one, turned out that was just the larval phase. So like you get to be what that hatches into in the second one. But that is what it hatches into is a beautiful girl with angel wings that looks like Nina from the Breath of Fire series. And then they introduce a new, like, hideous Bio Beast, which is even crazier looking than the one in the previous one. So, like, Denjin Makai 2 is just more of the same, but just refined better, right? Like, plays better, looks more beautiful, just more crazy over-the-top enemies, like mutants. And one of the ways Denjin Makai 2 really distinguishes itself from like other games in the genre, because this was a prolific genre, the backgrounds are ridiculous in Denjin Makai 2, and like full of like subtle animation. So like little things going on, but like as you mentioned, like adds a lot of humor and like a sense of like a world that's genuinely alive to the proceedings. So like although the gameplay itself isn't hyper revolutionary in terms of other games of the time, like the way in which it presented itself was so distinct that it became special. So like you would walk into you'd bust your way into like a diner and there would be like enemies eating at tables in the background and then they would look up surprised, and there would be like a surprise like exclamation point above their head. They'd put their meal down and then step into the foreground and then you would fight them. It would be like stuff like that like made this world feel like a real place. Even though it was insane and you were just punching a giant purple alligator, like the world felt realistic because it was alive with things happening in it. So it's just great. It's a great game, and like I just want more people to know about it and watch it and see it.
Yeah, this looks great. I say I'm watching some footage of that game in the second one as well. These look fantastic. The character design is super 90s anime.
Oh yeah,
it's just ridiculous, and there's seems to be some sort of Cabal style shooting stages in the bonus stages of the second one as well, which looks like a lot of fun. Yeah, cool. Gonna have to check those out, I think. Like I say, I've never heard of those before, so yeah, thanks for sharing those.
If I can introduce one new franchise or one new game to you and our listening audience every time, like that's my goal. Like I want to blow your mind with the weird shit, and like Denjin Makai is as weird as it gets with beat 'em ups, really. Unless we're counting about Puri Rula. Have you ever seen that one?
Is that the one where there's like a boss that's like a pair of legs sticking out of a?
Yeah.
I have seen that one. I haven't played it, but I have seen that one.
I don't even know if that's what. Yeah, I don't even know the actual. It's something like that, but like that's a. Pulirula. 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 That is a weird ass game. That's Taito. But I can't even speak to that. I've never played it. It's just like legendary for its strangeness.
Yes, I've come across that a few times, and I think, if I remember rightly, Game Grumps did a playthrough of that on their channel recently.
Okay.
So if you want to see that in action, I think they've played that recently, so that is there. But yeah, it's notoriously strange, that one.
When enemies are hit, they turn into animals that run off screen. The player is awarded points if they walk into the animals.
Of course. To add to that, got to add to the ever-growing collection of animals, fruit, and cake from the from 80s and 90s arcade games.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. what else did I have? I know I said I was going to avoid talking about the popular stuff, but I think we do have to talk a little bit about the Capcom D&D games.
Oh, of course.
Because they're just the best. They're the best. Like, they're the best. I remember losing my mind when they actually like made those available on like the PlayStation Store. The ports of them, because to collect the Saturn ports is just an exercise in futility. But just once again, like a beautiful example, like bridging the gap between hybridizing RPG mechanics with this genre. So like it took everything we've talked about loving about these games, right? The sense of physicality and progression, but just added all these little mechanical wrinkles that made it feel like also you were playing a role-playing game. So they were branching paths with choices, the D&D classes that all played differently. And what was really especially different and unique about these games was you had an item inventory.
Yeah.
And a button you could press to pull that up. Do you want to use a heal potion? Do you want to throw a dagger? Do you want to cast a spell? And like you could actually like do that mid-battle. This like wheel would come up. Like it was almost like casting a spell in the original Secret of Mana. Like this wheel would come up that you could scroll through. And they're just an example of like everything that this genre did well. Just perfect presentation, physicality, art and music. Just all culminating in like such an experiential game, you know? You can play through it in 20 minutes, but it just made you want to play through it again, like instantly.
Yeah. Those ports you mentioned are actually really good as well, because they incorporate a bunch of sort of metagame elements as well.
Yeah,
that
the
encourage you to
stuff.
Yeah, so it's not just the standard platform achievements either. There's like sort of specific things that it encourages you to do in the game a certain number of times, or encouraging you to go routes you haven't been before, and that sort of thing. And that really kind of addresses the issue I was talking about at the beginning with things like sort of like the credit feeding issue and so on. If you've got that additional bit of metagaming structure in there as well, that immediately makes it much more interesting. Even if you can still credit feed your way through the whole thing.
I think too, like those kind of features, especially like in modernized ports like that, address one of the genre's biggest issues in terms of like reputation, which is like, I think people in general, because of like the ability to quarter feed and stuff, have a tendency to dismiss beat 'em ups as like not mechanically complex.
Yes,
like,
yes, absolutely.
I think people who don't spend a lot of time thinking about or analyzing mechanics really tend to dismiss beat 'em ups as just mindless and like not challenging. But like everything we've mentioned in talking about them that are like inherent to the core of their gameplay, taking advantage of timing, distance, and hit stun, space and volume, enemy management, they were complex even from the earliest examples of the genre. But then like as the genre evolved and added things like combo attacks, blocking and dodging, item collection and use, like these are challenging and mechanically rich games with a lot of like programming depth behind them. In the best examples, obviously there are like crappy, cheap, simple ones, but like there is a rich amount of design in this genre to plumb the depths of, and modern ports with like achievement systems like that tacked on really actually form as a tutorial in a way where they're encouraging you to explore the depths of the game that you might never have actually considered in terms of the way it's built and designed.
Yeah.
It's simple things like not knowing you can cancel enemy attacks with like proper timing, and if I never would have thought to even attempt that in that game until like there was a thing to like do it 50 times. And then it radically changed my entire way of considering how to play it.
Yeah, that sort of learn by doing is really powerful, and there's a lot of developers that still haven't kind of nailed that in sort of games that have mechanical depth and complexity. This is going slightly off point, but one of the things I've noticed about the people who are playing the new Grand Blue Phantasy fighting game at the minute, because that came out very recently in Japan, is that the RPG mode in that is apparently a very effective way of learning the game as a whole. So it's not a separate experience, but it is designed to be a very effective way of teaching you the mechanics that you need to learn in that game as well. And again, it's just the whole learn by doing thing, putting you in different situations, giving you the opportunity to experiment with them and understanding what those mechanics are doing in different circumstances.
Yeah, and that's so valuable, especially for something. Fighting games have a similar reputation as beat 'em ups do, right? Like, people who aren't in the fighting game community with any great amount of depth tend to think you can just button mash your way through, and you can, but like, once you play your first tutorial mode in a Guilty Gear game, it's just like that meme of like that brain that like in each thing is like the brain expanding and like lighting up like more and more. It's like as soon as you get involved in like the tutorials of something like a fighting game, you realize depth that wasn't there. And like even something as simple as like Street Fighter 2. Like, I remember when that modern port of that modern HD remake of Street Fighter 2 came out, and like exploring the tutorials in that, like I had no idea like the depth to which you could play classic Street Fighter 2 with.
Yeah.
Like, and beat 'em ups in a very similar way. Like, watch someone on YouTube who's spent like years of their life perfecting the timing and cancel elements in the original Final Fight.
Yeah.
It's like they're not even playing the same game.
Yeah.
That you're playing. It's unreal. Watch like a no damage Final Fight run without tool assist.
Mm-hmm.
And like feel inferior as a human being. Like it's there. Like the complexity's there if you want to explore it. And that's one of the things I think is most beautiful about this genre is I love things that are easy to pick up, hard to master. And I think that's the greatest design sensibility is when something can achieve easy to pick up, hard to master. And the beat 'em up really does that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Were there any other titles that you had in mind?
I think I've mentioned most of the ones I wanted to bring up at this point. Like I say, it wasn't the genre I had a huge amount of exposure to growing up, but it was one that I always enjoyed playing. But in terms of the number of games that I experienced back in the day, it was fairly limited. So I've been really enjoying sort of discovering stuff that I didn't even know the existence of until recently. So like that Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle has been great for educating me on stuff that I'd never played before.
Sure.
Like Final Fight, for example, is one that I hadn't played before. I had seen a lot about it, and I remember reading about the Super NES version and so on, but I never actually played it until this Capcom Beat 'em Up collection. So, so that was a big gap in my knowledge. So, like I say, I have some fond memories of like Double Dragon 2, Ninja Gaiden, and that sort of thing, and Asterix. But I'm really glad it's making a comeback now because it's sort of an opportunity to go back and revisit a lot of these games that I would have really enjoyed feeding a bunch of 10p's into back in the day.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I have another whole section about like exploring the transition into like the modern indie sphere and like how these games have evolved to incorporate RPG elements. But we've already been on the classics for more than an hour. I feel like that's probably a new episode all in and of itself.
Yes, I think it probably is. And I think there's probably scope for talking about a couple of other things in there as well, which is sort of what I would probably regard as beat 'em up adjacent games. Because there's certain genres of games that have a lot of the elements that we're talking about, but they're obviously their own distinct thing as well. So I'm thinking specifically of several different types of things here. I'm thinking specifically of character action games. So things like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking of Warriors games, which are often described by people as beat 'em ups, but I don't think that's necessarily an accurate description of them. And also stuff like Senran Kagura as well, which Senran Kagura Burst is absolutely a beat 'em up. The other ones, I would argue, are not. I would argue that they are arena-based fighting games. But I mean, that's a whole other discussion for another day, I think. But so I think there's a lot to discuss about with these modern games, like you said. Like I am very keen to talk about Scott Pilgrim for one thing, and River City Girls. We've got a lot to talk about, I'm sure. I might actually get around to playing Double Dragon Neon at some point, even.
Oh, you gotta.
But yeah, I think that's probably a good place to hold it there. And there's a lot to talk about in a subsequent episode there. So we will add that to our ever-growing chart of things to talk about in the future. All right, let's wrap that up there then. So, as always, would you like to tell people where to find you online?
Absolutely. You can always find my artwork and get a hold of me at mrgilderpixels.com or on Twitter and Instagram at mrgilderpixels.
And now you know why it's Mr. Golden Pixels as well, don't you?
Because I love Skies of Arcadia.
There we go. Fantastic. All right, and you can find me on MoeGamer.net. Like I say, at the time of recording, I'm just kicking off the Atelier Mega Feature, so please look forward to some coverage of Atelier Iris, first of all, followed by Manakemia, followed by all of the other games that I've apparently committed myself to covering.
I can't wait to hear you talk about Manakemia. I've never actually played those, so I don't really know what makes them different and distinct from standard Atelier games.
I'm really intrigued by the whole series, which is why I want to do this. So, looking forward to this. And I've had some really sort of positive response to my announcement of doing this feature as well. There's a lot of people excited to read about this whole series in succession. So, I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to do, even if it takes a long time. So, looking forward to that. If you're listening to this on SoundCloud, you can also find a video version over on YouTube. And also on my YouTube channel, you have things like my regular features, which are playthroughs of Warriors games on Wednesdays, Final Fantasy Marathon on Fridays, and Atari A to Z on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And there's also sort of occasional feature videos going up there as well when I can find the time to actually record those and edit those as well. So please enjoy, basically, and subscribe and do all that good stuff that you do to YouTubers. Just remains for us to say then, as always, thank you very much for watching and or listening, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please help out the channel by leaving a like or a comment and subscribing. Be sure to check out MoeGamer.net for new articles on Japanese and Japanese-inspired video games, new and old, every weekday. Every month, MoeGamer features an in-depth exploration of an individual game or series as its cover game, so be sure to check the archives to see if your favourite has had a deep dive yet. If you'd like to support the site directly, please consider becoming a patron or buy me a coffee. You can find links to do both down in the video description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.